We're here back again for the weekly meta-analysis. This is a series that I do each week. Usually break down a top like 8 list from a tournament if there's a recent one that is like relevant. There we go. Relevant was the word. Awesome. And otherwise, I just take MTG Goldfish like top 8 lists, not necessarily for tournaments, but for leagues and such. And that allows me to sort of get an idea of what the meta looks like and what kind of decks are going to be popular, etc. And I just take a look at these lists that did well, try to analyze them on like why it performed well, why people are choosing certain cards, what the sideboards look like, what I might tweak to it, or if I just don't understand it and trying to get some trying to work through it in my head to try to better understand why people choose certain cards in their decks. So let's dig into the list. So this is from the Star City Games Tour Online number 4 Standard Challenge, and we're going to be taking a look at the Sultai, the Esper Hero, which was kind of down here, and then Sultai Ramp. And now these might not necessarily be the top lists, but they're the ones that look interesting. Like, I already know what Tamir Adventures looks like, and I already know why it's good. So I don't need to look at that list. So I try to look at other things like, and I haven't seen Sultai in a while. We all know what Sultai looks like, but why did this perform well compared to the other lists? So we're going to kind of break into that. So we're going to start with the Esper Hero that didn't do too well. And we're going to try to see why it didn't do too well, whether it might be variants or something else, and why they included certain cards. So looks like we've got 3 heroes, 3 generals. This is quite a high number. The last hero list that I saw only ran 1 of these. 3 Atris, 3 guard mages. So these are like enter the battlefield effects. No Yorion, so there's no Yorion for all of this. Because I know that I at one time ran like a Esper Yorion list with Sidetrack, and we used like Omen of the Seas to hit land drops, but this was before the nerf to companions, I believe, when you could just cast the Yorion for 3 mana. So maybe that's why people are kind of shying away from that, as well as wanting more impacts from the sideboard. 80 card list, harder to see the sideboard. So we got the generals, Atris, 2 Narsets, pretty standard. Actually, I don't know if I agree with the Narsets unless you're hitting a lot of Uros and such, because that's harder to cast and it's not multicolored. That's a little rough. We've also got Ashiok, which is multicolored. I like that. D-Spark, Dire. So a lot of one-ofs here, a lot of multicolors. That's pretty common. I kind of like that. 2 Absorbs, Scorns, Erasures, Oath. Okay. And then 26 lands. You see that right there. That's not too bad. So you can hit your 5 drops pretty well. Especially with the bit of vision that like Thought Erasure provides you, like being able to surveil. So... And then we've also got Vantress here, which isn't terrible. 2 Duress. So that's like for quick can't-hate, like just to check for sweepers, most likely. A D-Spark, 2 Heartless, probably for like Questing Beast, something this list struggles with a lot. Like, I mean, you got D-Spark and you got Dire, I guess, but still. D-Spark's good for Nissa, probably. No answers to Nissa aside from the D-Spark and the Veto here. So that makes sense. Drown and Lock, sort of, but like they have to have a lot in their graveyard. 1 Banishing Light seems weird to me. 3 Wraths, Baneslayer Angels, and Command. So this is for like aggro. Like, what would Baneslayer be for here? Like mono red, maybe. Yeah, a lot of mono reds actually. So that makes a little bit of sense, I guess. And 2 Cries for the Mardulas. See, I wouldn't even run like the Wraths so much. I would be more afraid. Like, I guess this is better against mono green, but the Cries seem better against like Mardu and such. But maybe Mardu is not that popular. Like, we can see there are no Mardus here, like Mardu Winota, for example. So, but it is good against Rakdos and mono black. Sort of. Mono black's a little weird because some of their creatures are thicker, but I would say like maybe Extinction Event might be a little easier to cast. Like, this is multicolored, so you get tokens with hero from it, right? No, you're going to blow up the hero. You get tokens before they blow up, I guess, and you get a little extra life, but that's like, I don't know. It just seems like removal that you can kind of control a little bit more and it's easier to cast would be better. Like I would say like maybe extinction events instead of this. Kind of hit creatures that you can't hit with your other removal potentially, but I don't know. And like not having thought distortion, well, thought distortion maybe is not as good against like since reclamation's not in the meta anymore. Yeah, because like aside from like Azorius control, I don't really want to thought distortion anything right now. I guess Sultai ramp it's fine against too. Like what Sultai ramp have? Oh, this has a lot of creatures actually. You don't really want to thought distortion that. That's a little rough actually. I don't know. It seems a little weird. This just sticks out to me a lot. Like a sore thumb. It's just a little like you blow up your whole win con when you do that, and you don't really have any other win cons that you're sideboarding into unless you're going to go Wrath and Command the Dreadhorde, which is a little weird. So say that a lot of this is teched toward mono red, at least in the sideboard, and then just having a good array of answers main deck. Atris for card advantage, just a lot of proactive plays, honestly, and this can exile a lot too. Sure. Seems interesting, at least. Move on to the next list. Like, I would probably change this to Extinction Event, is what I would change. I like the land count. I don't know if I like the Narsets. That might be more of a sideboard thing for me. Because Narset for one isn't going to hit a lot. Like, you have a lot of creatures and a lot of lands. Like, there's a time and place like where this is going to whiff a lot. It seems like it. Like, you have 15 targets for it. 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 targets. No, more, but still. I see it, Grixis. I got you. Okay. So we've got Abzan here. This one looked really interesting because I wanted to try something like this. So we've got 4 stone coils, 3 knights, Chevelle, which at the beginning of your upkeep, if your opponents control no permanents with bounty counters on them, put a bounty counter on target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. That's not random, you get to choose it. Whenever a permanent an opponent controls with a bounty counter dies, you gain 3 life and draw cards. So it's a bit of life gain and cycle, unless you're actually swinging at it. Like if you have to expend, for example, a Mythos, you're not going up in card advantage, you're trading one resource for another. So it's like cycle. But if you're actually just swinging at it with like a questing beast, it's really, really decent. So this is using like Kite Sails for a little bit of hand hate, 3 knights. This is good to check for like board wipes and such. 3 oozes, which is pretty nice just to be able to eat Uros and whatnot, any recursion from the opponent. A Paloomkros, which is always nice, like just to have so you can fight. Really good with the Chevelle. Really awesome. I like this list a lot. I might actually play this. This thing looks like it's really, really decent. Like just has a lot of like, for one, it ends games fast because it has a lot of haste. It has a lot of creatures. Big dudes too, like Paloomkros. Nissa, Garruk, Liliana, Mythos, and then like 3 Oaths. So it makes a lot of sense. I'd say the Nissas kind of stick out a little bit as weird. Like being able to turn your lands into creatures, awesome, but like what are we using all the mana for? Maybe Kethis triggers. And Kethis just gives you a way to like play your Nissa back, so I guess maybe having more planeswalkers, that's the idea from that. Kinda don't hate it, but I feel like there might be better options than Nissa, potentially. No Great Henge or anything for card advantage here either. Like you could go in a different direction with this as well and do like, this is what I would change for it. So like, hear me out, like Rotting Regisaur is a discard engine, right? Pitch it, and then get stuff back with Kethis later on maybe. Be kind of fun, right? And like Great Henge, like being able to get Rotting Regisaur and Great Henge rolling early. Play a bunch of dudes, and then the Nissa makes a little more sense because then you'd have a lot of mana to work with to keep casting more creatures. Not sure what you could really sacrifice for that engine though. It'd be interesting though. We've got the Mythos, the Oath just for some life gain and some spot removal. Makes sense. I mean, like, Vraska to self-sack too would make sense in this type of a list. There's a lot. Like, this is more, definitely more creature heavy, more aggro pushing. Like Questing Beast, and then this stands out to me. I don't know why this over something else. Liliana and Grook even make sense because that's like answering card advantage, etc. It's just that the Nissa, like, you're not really ramping into anything, you know? Like, you don't have any X cards aside from maybe Stonecoil. Steve Austin here. We've got how many Castle Lockwains? 1. Temples. Yeah, this makes sense to me. Like the reasoning behind like the 3 in Dathas over the other stuff, but so 3 eliminates to set up for like Narsets. Any type of aggro, like Priest. Being able to kill the Priest, 2 mana answers is pretty nice. 2 Grasp for Nissa. Interesting to have Grasp here instead of something like Despark. I guess this is a lot easier to cast, especially if a lot of your black sources are tethered directly to your whites. And then like something like, you know, if you have the other types of lands like the Swamp and no plains, I think you can cast Despark on like turn 2 anyway, every time. 2 Tolsim Years makes sense for aggro, like mono red. Although it's a little slow for mono red. So splash white only for Oath. No, they have Kethis here. They have Kethis and sideboard cards for white Elspeths. I want to see more like what I would like to see here would be like Rotting Regisaur with some other stuff. Otherwise, it's like just like Golgari midrange, aside from the Kethis for recursion. And like I'd almost rather see Golgari midrange with like Great Henge. Like especially now that Tamir Wreck isn't just gonna destroy us, or Teferi's just gonna out-tempo it. You don't have to worry about growth spiral decks either for the most part. Like they don't super out-ramp you now. The kite sails make a lot of sense. It's like I would rather see more kite sails almost. Like just to grab board wipes and such. And they pressure walkers really well too. Yeah, and then 1 casualty seems a little weird. Like with 25 lands, like that might be a little hard to cast without like Paradise Druids and stuff here. It looks interesting. I would just, it almost does seem worth it to cut out the white, but I do like the Kethis idea. I like maybe the idea of Rotting Regisaur in here. Oh yeah, and Mythos. They do have Mythos for white. That's very true. Ooh, that sounds really spicy, Diamond. If you guys are wondering too while you're watching the YouTube video, I have my Twitch chat going. So occasionally they're talking, and I try to respond to that as well. And they might be throwing some deck ideas at us for the viewer deck reviews coming up soon. The weekly viewer deck reviews, there we go. That sounds really good, Diamond, actually. I was trying to make Terror work. That sounds really spicy. A Jund midrange with cheap removal, grind with Kroxa, Terror of the Peaks, and then Elder Gargaroth. That sounds really spicy. I like it. I like the idea of that a lot. 3rd ooze coming in from the sideboard, or 4th ooze, so really a lot of graveyard hate there. Makes sense. I would just kind of like figure out some more graveyard synergy, some ways that you can pitch some more cards for Kethis, or like ways to get Oath of Kaya into the graveyard so you can exile that, like some self-mill, something, you know? Like, because there's no like Vraska forehead to like eat the Oath when you don't need it anymore to like cycle for Kethis. And maybe the deck doesn't need it. Maybe Kethis is just a way to recover from a board wipe or something. And legendary stuff costs 1 less. So like that's why they have like Paloon-Cross, they have Questing Beast, they have Rankle, stuff like that. Legendary spells, so like Nissa's discounted, Grook's discounted. Like you could do a lot with Kethis right now, honestly. Seems pretty nice. And Chevelle's discounted? No, just kidding. Kidding. He can only be 2 mana. His stats are really good for 2 though. And he has Death Touch as well. Trades a lot early game. Dodges Bone Crusher as well. Yeah. So looks pretty interesting. Then we've got Sultai Ramp. Like I don't know what kind of decks we're targeting with this one. Like probably just a mid-range, so just targeting all decks, like something that's kind of in between. What's this Tect for? Mostly say it's teched for like Narset there, like aggro, like mono red. This spells out mono red to me, mono red. And this deck in general can go up and above mono red, and it has enough life gain to sustain, so it's probably just tackling like aggro in general. And then like Temur Clovers, like being able to answer their Lucky Clover for 3 mana, I would say. I don't know what that means, Grixis. So here we've got 4 Grazers, probably because of the absence of Growth Spiral, just having ramp. Visionary also for ramp, draw a card. This also goes well with Jor-El. I feel like Jor-El could almost come up to 3 here instantly, but maybe that's a little much because you only need to see one of her. So Vraska, Nissa, Ugin, 3 casualties to lock in on Clover, 3 extinction events, 2 eliminates, 3 cultivates. How many basics? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, and then 2 fabled. Okay. So 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. So as long as you don't hit all of your fableds and all of your cultivates, you're good. I feel like we could use something like a Teferi Time Master as well, so we can draw and discard. Like something to like pitch these two eventually. We don't have any like vision, like no Omen of the Seas to put these on bottom when we don't need them anymore, stuff like that. Like it bothers me when I can't use Cultivate, you know? But maybe that's just me being value centric, like just overkill on it. Vraska needs a sack engine. I mean, means more Joel. Yeah. No, I can see that. Like Grazers and Vraska make a lot of sense. This is a sack engine, but it doesn't give you a way to like Teferi Time Master just gives you a way to discard cards you don't like. Whereas like I can't Vraska this Cultivate, yeah? Like that's impossible. I guess you could Vraska the Fabled Passages later. So like if you're strapped for that, you can choose to cast the Cultivate over the Fabled Passage to get some value out of your cards. And then sack the lands you get off of Cultivate later. It's just a minor thing. Also, like being able to sack the Visionary after you don't need the mana, stuff like that is pretty nice. What I don't like is like the massive amount of like, I guess 3 is fine. Like 3 extinction events, you sack what you need to. You probably go odd on these when you can, since all of your stuff is pretty much even aside from the Grazer. Well, no, I guess the Euro. It's a little weird. And thanks for the follow, man. I appreciate it. So this is mostly set up for Reclamation. You can kind of feel it. Like this can -3 blow up Clover. We've got casualties for Clover. Got a lot of stuff for Clover, honestly. No hand tape for Clover, though. No, like, remorsing the Fae before they can double cast it, which is kind of rough, but it's more proactive, this one is. And thanks for the follow, too, man. I appreciate that, Callow and Actually. And yeah, like, here's the hand hate in the sideboard, I guess. So 3 Remorses, 3 Negates, 2 Cries. So this is for, like, Sakdos and Mardu tokens. Like, this hurts Winota quite a bit because they can't sack the dogs to like make their dudes indestructible to save the board. Everything still gets exiled. Elder Gargaroth, I like this one. The only thing I don't like about Elder Gargaroth in this sense is your opponent's already going to be bringing in Grasp for like Golgari Queen and such if they have access to those colors. So when you're sideboarding in a creature which they're already targeting your other creatures for and your other planeswalkers for, it's a little tough, but I can respect it as a one of. I like it. 2 Thought Distortions. I think this tech is a bit dated. I'm not sure if this is worth it anymore because there's just, unless you're specifically targeting like you white control and you're running into that a lot of the decks, like if you go against Bant, it's going to look similar to this in regards to creatures where if you go to Thought Distortion them, you're still going to have to deal with the board state. So I don't know if I agree with this anymore. I love it, but I'm not sure if it's good anymore now that Reclamation's gone and Bant's kind of changed without Spiral and such. It could be really good though. It's just like, where's your Flash matchup? Like, what do you do against Flash? Like, you die, right? Like, I guess you're playing a lot of creatures, which is cool. So that's nice. I guess you have negates and remorses and stuff for Flash as well. It's just, it feels like Thought Distortion doesn't do enough. So I would change this out maybe, depending on the matchups. Like, it's not going to do anything against Tamir Adventures, which is your main thing. Like, I'd want like Wilts or something, even more hate versus the Lucky Clover, so I don't just lose to that, you know? Because this is your only Thought Distortion target right here. It's just about it. Even like other Sultai Rampless are still running like a lot of creatures. You know? It's just a little tough. All right, so hopefully that covers a bit of the meta that you might not have thought about until now. I was especially excited to try out maybe the Golgari. Well, it's not really Golgari, it's Abzan midrange, or to mess around with my own Golgari. That's what I've been inspired by for looking at the meta list. Like Chevelle just being able to blow up anything. The Mithros there is really good spot removal, and then you get to replace it and draw another card if you use it on like a Narset or a Planeswalker or something. And just all seems very like synergetic and such. So yeah, that being said, there'll be an end panel. You can hit subscribe. Helps the channel out a lot. And I put out a new YouTube video every single day. So hopefully you guys have been enjoying that. And I will see you guys for the next video. Also, all of the links to the lists are going to be down in the description below in order from where they were covered. So like, you know, the first list, second, etc. So it'll be pretty easy to figure out which one you wanted to export. So I'll see you guys later.